This is
another episode of RedPubPod.
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 a podcast
RedPubPod.
from Redhawk Publications.
RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us for yet again another episode of RedPubPod, which is the podcast for Redhawk Publications, an initiative of Catawba Valley Community College in darling, charming, home sweet, we love it, Hickory, North Carolina. If you've listened to us before, you realize that for the most part, we have fun. These are informal interviews with our authors and friends, and more importantly, we get to have a good chat after the fact when a book has finally been published, and we get to talk a little bit more about not just the author, their background, a little bit about their book, but also about their writing process, and I think that's helpful for many of our aspiring writers that are out there. So it's all part of education. Today, in addition to our author, who is Jane Everson, who I will introduce momentarily, we also have a very special guest host. And I'm going to introduce you first, Michelle Morgan, and you are with the Women's Resource Center here in Hickory. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. And in addition, as I mentioned, we have our author of the moment, Jane Everson. Jane Everson most recently wrote a book called Everyday Women, Extraordinary Wisdom. And thank you for writing that book, by the way, Jane. It's been a process for you, I know.
It has been a process, but it's been a great process.
Good. Would you tell everyone a little bit about your background? Where you're from, what you've been doing career-wise, what has led you to this moment, your background?
Okay. I grew up in the D.C. suburbs of Virginia, and I grew up in a family of, my father was an educator, my mother was a homemaker, and education was always a really important part of my family. So when I was in elementary school, I remember we had a class yearbook, I guess it was called, and my prediction for what would happen to me when I grew up was Janie, with many a fine feature, will one day make a great teacher. And so I did. I became a teacher. And I spent 40 years in education, primarily special education with kids with disabilities, taught at the high school level, taught at the university level. So I did a lot of, I guess what you call academic writing when I was a university professor, but I'd never done anything outside of that. But I always wanted to write a book. And I thought that what I was going to write was a murder mystery, because I love Scandinavian murder mysteries. But when we talk about the process, I'll tell you why I didn't write a murder mystery.
That's funny. Okay, that's good to know. Now, knowing your background and knowing you have done a lot of academic writing, and knowing that this, while nonfiction, it's certainly not what you're accustomed to have written in the past and what you've gotten published in the past. Right. What would you say were your biggest challenges dealing with a book for you that you're writing as nonfiction?
Well, I think there were two challenges. The first challenge you alluded to, and that is because I've written so much academically, it was difficult for me to write to an audience that wouldn't have a highlighter in hand and be thinking about what was going to be on the midterm exam. So that meant changing not only the style and the content, but just the voice even. And then I think the second part for me, I think most authors would probably relate to, is that I had to really wrestle with whether I was going to tell my story. And that was really difficult for me, because as I started talking to other women and they told their stories, I thought, wow, they're way braver than I am. I'm not sure I can be this honest about myself. And to this day, to be honest, I don't think I was as honest as some of the other women. There are things that I didn't say, and I don't know that I would be comfortable saying. So those who are really able to tell their stories, I have the greatest admiration for.
Yeah, no, I understand completely. And just so that folks are aware, I happen to know Jane Everson for many years. I know her as Dr. Jane Everson, as the academic. And when I first got the first draft of this book, It was pretty academic. I loved the book, but I sent it back.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
Do you remember what I told you, more or less?
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the questions I had. What made you ultimately decide to share your story?
Because the other women in the story were so brave, and I thought my options were either don't say anything about yourself, which seemed really lacking in courage, or do your best to say what you could and then leave maybe some of the parts that you wouldn't tell open to things like this, where it wouldn't be in writing.
And I guess, full disclosure, you did interview several women for this book,
Yes.
of which I'm one of them.
Yes.
So if anyone's nosy out there, you should get the book.
See if you can figure out which one is Patty, huh?
Because you gave us all the option to have pseudonyms, and so I have one in there. So
I love
yeah,
that. Yeah.
you'll have to figure out who I am, folks. But we do encourage you to buy this book, Everyday Women, Extraordinary Wisdom, written by Jane Everson, at our website. Yeah, we're getting that plug in there. RedHawkPublications.com is where you can go ahead and get your copy of it. Can you explain, Jane and Michelle, just want to make sure it's clear what folks know the relationship is between Jane, author of this really good book, and what you're doing with Michelle, who's with the Women's Resource Center.
Well, I think the connection is when I first moved to Hickory was year 2000, and I was working remotely from LSU Medical Center, so I knew nobody in Hickory. And I remember it was really exciting to go to Harris Teeter and, have contact with someone, because, when you work at home, you just don't have contact with people. So I don't remember where I learned about the Women's Resource Center, but somehow I got involved there as a volunteer, and I was in the book club, and then I served on the board of directors for a number of years. And it's just always been an organization, because it was one of the first I was ever involved with, that's always been close to my heart, the work they do.
And your connection with Jane?
Yeah, I just knew of her as a previous board member, and that was before my time when she was involved with the center. But honestly, when she came to me with the idea of some of her proceeds going to Women's Resource Center, and I just thought, with the title of the book, the content of the book, what a wonderful partnership to have with Women's Resource Center for this book launch. Yeah.
Okay. That, I think so too,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
excited me very much when that connection was made. I'm like, of course, that's where that's going to
It's
happen.
just,
So
yeah, no
it's
brainer.
kind of neat. And we will be talking a little later, and it will be in the description, about the book launch that Jane's going to be having as a fundraiser for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Women's Resource
we're
Center. So
excited.
we're excited about that as well. When you started writing this, knowing that this was going to be a little bit more of a different kind of writing journey for you, how did you plan it? And we ask that of authors, like, did you disciplined? Were you up every day at 6 planning to write a chapter a day, or was it more organic? It's like, no, today I think I'm going to tackle this part of it. What was your process for actually writing this book?
I wish I could say I really had a process. A lot of my process, I'm an insomniac, and so I'm up most of the night. And when I'm up, I'm either reading or I'm thinking. So I would either be reading a book, or I'd be thinking about what I was going to put in this book. And so I wrote most of this book between the hours of probably 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. And if I went back to bed and I had an idea, I'd jump out of bed and run to the computer and write it down. So my process is probably not one that you want to recommend to most authors.
It's whatever floats your boat. Now, but you're actually the second author I know that does that. There's a
Wow.
fiction author I know that she doesn't like the discipline of it, but when her characters wake her up at 3 a.m., she gets up at 3 a.m. and she starts her book. And then you get the people that it's like 1,000 words a day, 10,000 words a day, 6 to 4. I
Oh,
don't care.
goodness, no.
Yeah.
Nothing like
It's-
that for me.
It's all over the place. I found that what was interesting was the reason you wanted to write this book. Didn't it have something to do with like a challenge to yourself, or like a New Year's?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I do a vision board every year. And I usually do it right around New Year's, as one does. And I do that because I hate New Year's resolutions that say, you will do this or you won't do that. So I just always cut out pictures and things from throughout the year, and I hang them on poster board, and I put it in my bulletin board in front of my computer. And every year for about 5 years, it said, write a book. So one day I just thought, well, by golly, you're getting older. You better write that book if you're going to write it. So that's when I was thinking, well, I'm going to write a murder mystery. And it's going to be set in either New Orleans or Hickory, because those are two cities near and dear to my heart. I figured out that I'm really good at describing scenery, and I'm really good at describing characters. I have not a creative bone in my body when it comes to plot.
A little important when it comes to it.
Yeah, pretty important in most books. You'll note that this book has no plot.
But you do weave some stories, expert level. You're really hitting the mark in terms of telling the story of how many different women? Was it
11 women.
Were there any other books that you read that you would say you stylized or emulized or that influenced this? Because again, there have been people that have done similar books, interweaving different people's tales. Who would you say would be the closest to?
Well, there's a woman by the name of Mary Catherine Bateson, and she is the daughter of Margaret Mead, so she's well recognized for her skills as an anthropologist, but also her family ties. And her father is Gregory Bateson, who is also a well-known psychoanalyst. And she wrote a book in about 1999, I'm kind of dating myself here, about women. And they were fairly ordinary women in that they had accomplished quite a bit in their lives, but they weren't people that were on the cover of magazines. One was the president of a university, and this was a time when I think women's stories were not really being told. Well, I have held on to that book throughout my life because I loved reading it over and over and over. And every time I read it, and the older I got and the more people I knew, the more I realized that really there are stories that every woman has. And there's not a lot of opportunities for us to tell them. And when we do tell them, they're often not captured. So I wanted to take what I consider to be everyday women, just people who are going through their lives, muddling their way through marriages and careers and families and volunteer work and everything else, and ask them to tell their stories and actually make sure I was capturing not only their story, but also what I'm calling their wisdom and wit, what they thought was important and relevant for other people to know about them.
Just in case you have questions, Michelle,
Sure.
you just jump in when you want to.
Well, speaking of wisdom and wit, is there anything from the book that you wrote, one of the woman's stories, that kind of stands out and like affects you right now that you can't stop thinking about? Is there anything in there that?
Yeah, there's actually two, if you'll bear with me. One is a woman who was my administrative assistant when I worked for a nonprofit in New York. And she was a woman of some stature, and she was a woman who was very commanding. And she was very independent and very skilled, and I loved her work, and I gave her a lot of independence. Well, after about 2 years, I realized she was embezzling money from the company. And it was heartbreaking to me because I really saw her as a friend, and probably selfishly, I saw myself a little bit as a mentor to her. Mm. And of course, I had to walk her out of the office that day, and she went in a police car. And during COVID, I don't know why, I was thinking about writing a book like this, and I Googled her. And it turned out that she had indeed gone to prison. Oh. And while she was in prison, she earned degrees, and she also became a seminarian. And she came out of prison, and she was now a writer in residence at Columbia University. And we connected and had this incredible, it was a Zoom call, and this incredible opportunity to talk about forgiveness. Wow. And she kept saying how she'd wanted to reach out to me and express how badly she hurt me. And I said, no. I always felt like I let you down by not being the best boss that I could be. So it was really nice to have that come back, full scale, and then to have her feel comfortable sharing her story here.
That's so powerful. Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the other woman was a woman who was a mentor of mine. And I just thought she was like the most perfect person in the world. Perfect marriage, perfect job, perfect home, perfect board of directors for everything that she served on. I mean, just incredible. Well, one day it turned out that her husband, who she was in business with, and he was a clinical psychologist, he called her from Washington, D.C. to say he was about to be arrested for making sexually explicit calls to women. And it turns out that for years he had been doing this and having affairs with people. And their marriage, of course, fell apart, and the business fell apart, and she went on and made a new life for herself. And then years later, she discovered, I think he had her name in his pocket or something. He was on the streets, homeless, had Parkinson's disease, and she was called, and she forgave him and took care of him in the latter parts of his life. And she talks about the power of forgiveness. That just really hit me because I thought, I don't know if I could forgive somebody that did something to me like that. It was I wrestle with that a lot. Unfortunately, I've never had to forgive that level of betrayal, but that's huge.
I can see why that stands out.
Yeah. I mean, right there, those are two examples of resilience.
Yes, resilience and forgiveness.
Women's abilities to overcome and move forward. That's amazing.
Yeah, and to me, those are very good examples of just everyday women in situations that can and do happen to all of us, but how we decide to deal with it is what makes us strong or not.
Yeah, and the courage to share that with people.
Yeah, and that's what I meant to earlier when I alluded to the courage that these two women had in sharing their stories that I would have wanted to bury.
Right, that's one of the things you're not proud of.
Yeah, it does surprise me sometimes when I get memoirs that come in. I look at them, and quite frankly, the two or three I'm thinking about, we've published. And I look at it and I'm like, dang, I don't know if I'd say that, brother. But you know what? It's what makes the book good.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's our ability to be vulnerable
Yeah.
and to show all sides of the person. It's not just all the glory part, to be open and share with people. It makes it accessible.
It does.
It's like, oh, you know what?
You see yourself in the other people.
You really do. So you champion that person. So to me, you're having the ability to do that with a few women in your book. So that's kind of nice. Who would you say would be the right audience, or who would read this? I'd like to think everybody, because I'm trying to sell books. But
Well, I hope it would be women of every age. But I really hope that younger women, younger than me, women in their 20s and 30s, who are probably still really wrestling with some of these things, that they really are their everyday experiences. For me and for many of the women in this book, it's in the rear window, and they've dealt with it and are dealing with it, but it's in the past. But if you're in the midst of some of these kinds of things, I hope that a book like this will resonate, that you see the stories, you see that they came through it. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to call it Wisdom and Wit, so that it wouldn't be seen as, well, you should do this, you should do that, or I wish I had done this. More just, here's some things I've learned, and here's some humor about the story.
yeah, and that's one thing about this world and this life. You better have a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
I did notice also at the end of your book, I love the fact that it's not a big book, folks out there listening. It's under about 100 pages, give or take a little bit. But at the end of the book, you have an opportunity to maybe make an exercise out of it for people. Would you share a little bit about that? Because I think that could be very interesting to our listeners.
Sure. I included in the book the questions that I used to interview women, and suggested that people speak to their moms, their sisters, their aunts, anybody in their sphere of influence that they thought might be interested in sharing their stories. And again, getting those stories down, because I think asking and listening are something we don't do enough of. I also just suggested people think about doing a vision board. There's a national group, I think one meets at the Women's Resource Center, called Women Sharing Wisdom, and I too have taken on that challenge to have a group meet at my house where people talk about these kinds of topics. So I hope that the book generates those kinds of discussions among busy, everyday women.
I think I was really intrigued by the word improvisation that you use in the book about our lives and living in an improvisational way. When you wrote in this book and while listening to the other women, how did that come to play for you?
Well, I wrote in the book that as a high school student, I was a musician.
Yeah.
And so that's where the whole idea of improvisation came from. And I very quickly realized that I had no talent when it came to music. So that's why I'm not a musician today. And a lot of it was listening to some of my fellow band and symphony members and singers doing improv work. And I think, how are they making this up as they go along? And how do they know what are the guidelines and what is the structure? And where do you deviate and where do you not deviate? And I realized that's really what we're doing in our lives. We're making it up as we go along, which is, a fancy way of saying improv.
Yeah.
But we do it within the cultural and the familia and the social structure that is imposed upon us. And we have to. We can't completely go off in left field and improvise our lives. But if we just stick with that structure, then we're not really living our authentic selves. So I wanted to take the word improv
that,
and
yeah.
talk about how can you really make it up as you go
Yeah.
along.
I think it's beautiful. Yeah.
I remember we've had this conversation before, Jane, where we talked about, goals in life when they were established when you were young. And it wasn't until a conversation that I had with you with a group of women when I realized you had the ladder and, you had goals and you went up the rungs of the ladder. And I realized my first rung, well, when I was asked what I wanted to be as a little child, it was Popeye. It was a hobo. My brother wanted to be a pilot at 3. He became a pilot. My sister wanted to be an actress. She became a performer. I did not become Popeye or a hobo. But clearly, the rungs on the ladder just were guides there. But I did use the jungle gym approach. Where you just go, the ladder doesn't go up, it goes across, and I grab whichever one I feel like grabbing, or whichever one I'm shoved into.
Yeah.
And I've been very, very fortunate and blessed that the rungs have been there.
You didn't fall.
Sometimes I've fallen off, but I dust it off and get back up. That's the improvisation.
Yeah.
And that's a really good example of how very, very different our careers have been. And it doesn't make any one of us better than the other. It's just we chose a different approach. And I think I improvised, but not as much as you, perhaps.
Yeah, the 9 careers of Patty Thompson. But yeah, it makes it interesting. I admire the fact that, man, she had a goal and she stuck to it. And she
put it out in the universe and did it.
Yeah, and I'm still looking for different rungs on the ladder. But that said, I appreciate what you did and how you accomplished it. Would you mind taking a moment or two to maybe read a passage from the book so people get an idea of what they can get when they order this book on RedHawkPublications.com?
How about, since Michelle talked about improvisation, maybe I read just a little bit about improvisation? As a high school student, I considered making music therapy my career. I studied voice, piano, and percussion instruments in an attempt to develop musical technique and practice performance skills. It was then that I was first introduced to the concept of improvisation. In music, improvisation requires a musician to adhere to prescribed musical techniques while also providing opportunities for spontaneous communication among musicians. Improvisation encourages musicians to evoke unfettered responses among each other by listening and then responding with unique melodies, harmonies, and rhythms while still conforming to stylistic elements. I marveled at the ease with which my fellow musicians communicated with each other, the joy they shared with each other as they listened, and the confidence they felt to explore, make mistakes, and build upon each other's offerings.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. And it just kind of affirms what we've just been talking about.
Yeah, thank you for that prompt.
Yeah, I love that
it.
part. Yeah.
It's neat. So since we are fortunate enough to have Michelle here, tell us a little bit about the Women's Resource Center so that we're going to tie in what you're doing with this women's community here, and we'll tie it into the event that we're really looking forward to in August with Jane.
Sure, yeah. We've been around since 1987. We help women one-on-one. We support them through life's challenges such as domestic violence, unstable housing, job loss, you name it, whatever a woman can go through, we sit down with them and provide one-on-one assistance, goal planning, and advocacy to get them to where they need to be. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. And tell us a little bit about this event that's going to happen. Where and when?
Yeah, we're going to be doing a book launch at NoCo Arts in Newton. It's a beautiful art gallery that just opened a little over a year ago, I think, or close to a year ago. And we are going to have some light bites and some drinks, and we're going to have a beautiful book written here by Miss Jane, and she's going to read for us and sign books. It's going to be on August the 7th from 5:30 to 7:30, I think, yeah.
Perfect.
So we would love for you to come out. Some proceeds of the book are going to go to Women's Resource Center, so it's going to be, getting a wonderful book and for a good cause. So yeah,
That's great. And I've been to NoCo Gallery. It's absolutely
I
stunning.
love it. Yeah.
If you're in the listening area, please try to come, because not only are you going to hear an amazing book and meet an amazing author and help a fantastic cause, but you're going to see some extraordinary art. So
Oh yeah.
And I might just add that the cover of the book
yes.
was done by Missy Cleveland, who is one of the artists who I think co-founded
Yes.
NoCo. And that was important to me because I wanted an everyday woman who was an artist to be able to design the art, and I'm just delighted with what she did.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
beautiful. I love her art.
it is extraordinary. And I will say that when we decided to look into what we were going to do for the cover, it's an extraordinary piece of work that Jane commissioned. And, we like to make these a collaborative process as much as we can. And I want to thank Jane for being willing to kind of let us kind of take reins with this one. We took the art, but we made it kind of creative. And again, when you buy the book, you'll see. But that said, it is pretty. I happen to think it's one of our better covers. So thank you for commissioning it.
Oh, you guys did a great job with it. I was very pleased with what Missy came up with, because not being an artist myself, I just said, read the book, go for it, whatever speaks to you. And I thought it was great, and then I loved what you guys did with it to just make it perfect.
Yeah, we have to thank Erin Mann for that. She is our new graphic designer, and I think she took it to heart, and she knew how important this book was going to be for women. So that was a special little blessing that we got. Any more books in the work, Jane? I know you checked this off your list, but I'm just kind of curious.
I don't know. People keep asking me that, and since I can't write a Scandinavian murder mystery, I'm pretty sure that's not going to be around. I am thinking about maybe doing something similar where I interview caregivers. Because my career has been with children with disabilities, I have a number of parents who are now in their 70s, and their children who were students of mine are in their 50s. And the struggles that they're facing as they age with their family members. And then I'm a caregiver myself for my 92-year-old mother, who will be very upset I mentioned her age. But so I think that might be another book, but I'm going to give this one a little time first.
Yeah, and it's funny because when we do ask that of authors, especially if it's fiction or poetry, they always got one loaded. They're always on to the
Ready,
next one.
yeah.
I usually like to caution authors, give yourself some time to sell this book. It just came out. So it's smart. Yeah, give your time to fully envelope the experience that you're going through for your very first book, and the second one will come. And by the way, I think that's an amazing topic.
I really do. I think that would be very beneficial to a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. You can get some sandwich generations in there too.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Well, ladies, unless you have any additional questions, Jane, I want to thank you so much for being one of the easier authors to deal with. Not that I have problems with the more hand-holdy type authors, but it's been an absolute pleasure working with you.
Oh,
on this.
well, you were an amazing coach. You were very good at coaching me through when it was too academic.
Good, but
Other
break
things
this
you
down.
needed me to do.
Jane, I think I see one word with 5 syllables. We're going to have to work on this one.
I promise I didn't highlight anything. But I think it's a book you can dog ear and reread too.
Oh,
one of those,
absolutely. Yeah. And I really,
yeah.
I hope I do get an opportunity to meet some of the other women if they're forthcoming at the event on August 7th, simply because I really don't mind if people know who I am. So, yeah, so there's that. But I'd love to meet some of these other individuals because they do stand out to me.
Yeah.
They're standalones, each one of them.
That's awesome. Thank you for this gift of a book, and thank you for gifting what you're doing for Women's Resource
my
Center.
pleasure. Thank you for what
But
you
I
do. You
think-
do the hard work.
I think this belongs in every woman's hands. So if you have women in your family, I think I can't wait to get it for all the women in my family. So
That's
yeah, I think
wonderful.
it's special.
And I will mention that when you're reading a good book, one typically likes to read it in a coffee shop, maybe like Tasteful Beans, our sponsor.
Yay!
How I got that one in there, huh? I like that. By all means, please patronize our number one sponsor of RedPubPod. That would be Tasteful Beans, located in downtown Hickory. Fantastic coffee, wonderful art that you can buy, books as well, and pretty good food. They source locally, so
Yeah.
we're very
It's a great
proud.
place.
We actually met there to discuss this
did,
book
we
launch.
did.
My favorite place too.
You're gonna find it's kind of like the literary hub
It is,
unofficially.
yes.
It is.
A lot of whenever I'm in there, I'm finding poets there, writers there, people
Yep.
talking about books. So.
Well, I mean, the owner is a poet, so
Scott,
Yeah.
Scott Owens, he created an
Yes.
amazing community. So again, we're thankful for Tasteful Beans. And we always encourage people to go and find us on the internet. We're on Facebook. We've got an Instagram account. And certainly check out our commerce website, which is redhawkpublications.com. We're going to ask Jane to autograph a few copies so that if you order the book, you'll actually be getting an autographed copy. So head on down to that website so you can get a copy of that signed. And I think that's really it. The only thing we have left to do is to ask both of you ladies to say the name of our podcast, RedPubPod.
RedPubPod.
I love it. She's an actor. She just mimicked me. That's good. That's good.
A RedPubPod.
And she did it as well.
That was hard.
I know. I want to thank you both. Richard, thank you too for being our engineer today. He gave us a thumbs up. And that's it. Ladies and gentlemen and folks listening, we appreciate you coming in and hanging out with us for another episode of RedPubPod.
This is
RedPubPod.
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 a podcast
RedPubPod.
from Redhawk Publications.
RedPubPod.
I love it. She's an actor. She just mimicked me. That's good.